right?
Yeah, I think so.
Stays ready.
Can he
never has
pitch?
to get ready. We know we should ask him. We know he played offensive line.
Right.
Don't know if he pitched, though.
Does he? I was going to say, if he has just even a little bit of pitching, does he have any eligibility?
And, in today's college athletics, your eligibility is only a lawsuit away.
Yeah, there you go.
Charles Bediako taught us anything. It's all you got to do is maybe get a little bit litigious, and you can be able to play college sports again, or maybe play college sports for the first time. But a lot to get into today. We'll also get into a leadership discussion here for football. But first, we'll go ahead here from our pal, Preston Thorne. Preston is on the cell phone. Good morning, Preston. How are we doing this morning?
What's up, Elijah, man? We're reporting from parts unknown early in the morning on the road, live from somewhere.
live from somewhere. Nobody tracked down where Preston Thorne is. There's important business.
That's an album from some artist, live from somewhere.
Live from somewhere.
Or it should be, I'll put it that way.
I think Parts Unknown was already taken by Anthony Bourdain, though, so I don't know if we can trademark that.
Good point.
Can't do that one. Yeah. What about remote location?
Oh, I don't know if that one has been trademarked. We're going to have to get the crack staff on that. Or we have a very large staff over there in Studio 803 that hangs out while we do the show in here, and we're going to have to get them on that so we could probably maybe get it trademarked, maybe be able to make some money from it. But, one thing that is a potentially money-making machine, especially now that the new TV deal is going to be kicking in for the women's basketball tournament. It's more lucrative now to be able to make the women's basketball Final Four in the national championship game than it ever has been. Again, a new TV deal from the Mouse helps out a lot there. But that road really starts today with South Carolina taking on Kentucky. And yesterday, Kentucky and Georgia, which usually like the second day game in the SEC women's tournament, because the SEC has always been, at least, in my lifetime and in the recent years of covering the entire tournament, it's been pretty top heavy. And usually you have to wait until day 3 before you get into a lot of the really intriguing stuff with teams that are going to be playing in the NCAA tournament, teams that have major national expectations. Kentucky and Georgia are actually two teams that are ranked right now, and they played on day 2 of this thing. And then their prize is to get to play South Carolina for whoever wins. And yesterday it was Kentucky. Kentucky ends up winning by 15. And this is a very interesting part here, Preston, because you can look at South Carolina's game against Kentucky just last Sunday and say, well, easy look-ahead type trap game that they could fall into because you are playing a really good team on the road, but you already clinched the SEC regular season. You already clinched a 1 seed in the SEC tournament. You have pretty much done everything that you need to clinch a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, are you playing for maybe the number 1 overall or the number 2 overall? Yeah, for sure. But it could have easily been a look-ahead game. You didn't play your best offensively, and you were still able to scratch and claw your way to a win in a pretty close game. But I did think that proved Kentucky's pretty solid. Now, Kentucky's one of those really interesting teams because there's a lot of variance with how they play. But yesterday, Clara Stratt going for 33 points, hitting 5 3-pointers in the game. She has not hit more than 3 threes in a game since February 5th and waits until March 5th to drop 5 triples. They're a very interesting team because they are good on both offense and defense. I'd say really good. They are one of the few teams in the SEC that is top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. Preston Thorne, out of all the runs we've seen this South Carolina team have to make in the SEC tournament, this one may be the toughest because your first draw in this bracket is a team like Kentucky that is a top 20 overall team.
Yeah, it usually doesn't go like that. As you stated, you have to wait until a little bit later for the game to heat up. But that being said, how perfect of a gift was it for Coach Staley and the rest of the staff to play that close game and be able to say, hey, look, y'all see what they can do to you? Mm-hmm. Not saying that they would overlook them, but just the idea, like, they almost beat y'all 2 weeks ago. So you make sure you tighten up and run the scout and do everything that we need to do. And I think that was the best gift for a coach is a close win, because then you can get back and you win the game, and you also get a chance to teach off of it. So I think it's a great motivating factor And I think that'll play a role in how this game plays out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that Don Staley would love more than an example of, hey, you can get got, by this basketball team right here. And Kentucky almost did it, and it was kind of a defensive slugfest too, but Kentucky's no stranger of putting teams in that. I mean, if you haven't watched a ton of Kentucky this year, that is a team that's good. Like that, what I like about them is that they're good at a little bit of everything. Really, the only metric that they're not really good in at all is defensive turnovers. So turnovers forced. They play a pretty conservative defense, and that's usually not a telltale sign if a defense is really good if you're not forcing a ton of turnovers. It's probably a lot of scheme or schematic stuff. You probably play a lot of drop coverage. You're probably not gambling a lot on passes. You're keeping all the action kind of in front of you. But their opponents don't ever shoot really well, and they do really good on the glass. And what's one thing that South Carolina's done really well this year? They're a very efficient shooting team, and they normally dominate the backboards, right? This is a Kentucky team that can at least neutralize a little bit of that and kind of equalize things a little bit. And for a quarterfinal game, not something you see often. And I think the big thing, too, that I learned yesterday was that if Clara Strack's engaged, she is the best player on that team. I think, Tony Morgan's had a really solid season, and if you look at a lot of maybe some of the advanced numbers, she's oftentimes viewed as the most valuable player on that team. But when Clara Strack's hitting a lot of shots, and she's really good in the mid-range, she can make things really difficult for you because she is a tough shot maker.
So if you were to remind me really quickly, what was the bugaboo for them last game when they played? Was it a consideration of Kentucky playing above their head or South Carolina not executing?
I think it was some of South Carolina not executing in especially in the 2-point range. That was a game that I think Kentucky did do, to their credit, a good job of kind of bringing it into the mud, right? Or making, dragging South Carolina to the deep end a little bit, because it wasn't a very high possession game. And they did cloud it around the rim a little bit. I mean, South Carolina, who's been so much better this year. I know early in the season we talked a lot about how many shots are you missing near the basket. And against Oklahoma, that's what beat them, right? And then since that Oklahoma game, you haven't seen South Carolina miss a ton of shots around the basket. They were 17 of 29 around the basket against Kentucky. So if they're missing, 12 layups or 12 shots, within the block or closer, then that's going to open the door for Kentucky to be able to hang around and hang in there. Now, one thing that helped South Carolina is obviously holding Kentucky to 56, and Kentucky at the rim was 8 of 19. Helps to have someone like Medina Okad in there and a couple of the bodies that you're able to throw and some of the big lineups that you can deploy. I think that helps out a ton in a game like this. So even though South Carolina didn't maybe execute their best on offense, and they definitely struggled from three-point range, they were 5 of 18, but I do find it encouraging, Preston Thorne, that Tessa Johnson got 10 of them up. Again, that's one of those things we can live with, right? If South Carolina's only scoring 60, but Tessa's at least getting 10 three-point attempts off, if she goes 2 for 10, I think you can live with it because you've seen what happens when she gets really hot, and the numbers tell you she's not going to do that a ton. So I do still feel really good about South Carolina in this game. I just do find this to be a very valuable test as to how they'll handle some really quality teams on neutral sites.
The question I always ask, what level can South Carolina play this game and still win? Meaning, do they have to play an A game? Do they have to play a B game? What can they play this game and still win?
Ooh, I think you may be able to get away with a C+ game.
Okay.
I think you can get away with that just because you are, in theory, you are deeper. Now, they didn't really use the bench a lot. The only bench player that got more than 10 minutes against Kentucky was Maddie McDaniel, who was on the floor for 20, but Dowd only got 9. Tornaby's got 6. Gotti only got 5. Isla McDowell only got 4. I think you'll need some of them to be able to step up in this game and to be able to give you 10 or 11 minutes. I see a couple of them play in double digits. But this is a game that I look at that you can maybe get away with playing your C+ game if you are maybe not shooting well from 3 like you did on Sunday over in Lexington where you were 5 of 18, or if you're not getting to the free throw line a ton, kind of like what happened in Lexington. That was a surprisingly low free throw total game. Both teams combined to shoot only 15 in that game. I think that's something you can get away with, but it's not something I want to continuously try, right? Kentucky's one of those teams you don't want to try.
You obviously don't want to do that, but you just want to think like, what type of game do we need to play? And again, this is you're into the tournament, so a lot of the teaching goes out the window. We're basically in this, hey, a win is a win. We're moving forward. We'll get it. We'll get them the next time. So, however you can win, you want to do that. I don't have the bracket in front of me, but with that being said, LSU, Texas, collision course. Is that how that's going to work out?
Yeah, when you do look at the bracket, or if you at least you look at some of the games today, obviously South Carolina and Kentucky are going to be playing the first game on the slate. You can play. The thing about this bracket too is interesting because LSU end up getting the 4. LSU and Oklahoma will play today, and the winner of LSU Oklahoma gets South Carolina Kentucky winner, which I expect to be South Carolina. When it comes to predicting Oklahoma LSU. Oklahoma did not play very well in that first half against Florida at all. And then the third quarter, after the halftime break, they come out and outscore them by 20 and really kind of put that thing to bed pretty soon after that. But that game is one whenever South Carolina and Kentucky go final, watching that one and seeing exactly who you're going to play and how they're playing going into it is going to be fascinating. And my question for you, Preston Thorne, is who would you rather see between Oklahoma or LSU?
As soon as you said that, I had my answer ready. It's obviously Oklahoma.
Okay.
We gotta avenge that loss. I'm good with LSU. I think we beat them, and honestly, I think we broke them down there in Baton Rouge on Valentine's Day. I think that was the thing that I feel like that one is sealed up. At least maybe we'll see them maybe in a championship or something like that. But we need to avenge this Oklahoma loss because they caught us off guard. They were obviously playing their A game. We were playing our less than C game, and they beat us fair and square, and there was no problem with that. But this would be a nice time to let them know, like, hey, we're going to get our lick back.
Yeah, and I'm always for getting your lick back. And then after Oklahoma LSU, which we're getting a top 10. That's a top 10 matchup in the quarterfinal of an SEC tournament. Then we have Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, and then Alabama and Texas in the nightcap, and that's how that bracket will shake up. And then if you're able to beat either Oklahoma or LSU in the championship on Sunday, you will get more than likely one of Texas or Vanderbilt, unless Coach Yo gets Ole Miss to be able to pull off an upset, which I'm not eliminating from the realm of possibility. Ole Miss does have a pretty solid ceiling to them. But coming up next, when you look at the football team in 2024, you can attribute a lot of that success to incredible defensive leadership, especially from a lot of the newer guys on your team. They made a great impact on the field and in that locker room. Well, how much of that can we get back for this year? What might that look like for 2026 in order to turn things around here for this football program? Shane Beamer talked about that earlier in the week, and we'll revisit what he had to say coming up next here on the early game.
Hey, it's Jen for CHW Cabinetry in Lexington. We redid our kitchen, and we're so thrilled with how it turned out. We weren't planning on redoing our kitchen, but a flood kind of made that happen. But every step of the process was so great. I was very stressed out when, the kitchen flooded, and it's like, oh, we were going to remodel our kitchen. What do I do now? And the folks at CHW Cabinetry were absolutely fantastic, helped show us the different options we had, different accessories that were new, and we got everything put together, got that photorealistic rendering that I bragged about, because when you see a picture of your finished kitchen before it's finished, kind of gives you something to look forward to. But I'm telling you, you can utilize their services without a full remodel. You could just update a bathroom, replace a cabinet. You could update some things in your closet. So many ways. Check them out online, chwcabinetry.com, or call them at 803-520-6837. Tell them Jen sent you. CHW Cabinetry in Lexington. Passion from inspiration to installation. And this morning, we do have a report of an accident, Browning Road near Burning Tree Drive, and also Wessinger Road at Old Lexington Highway. So 2 areas to be mindful of this morning as you're making your way into work or school or both. And your forecast looking pretty good. 82 today, a little bit of fog this morning. That'll burn off. 81 tomorrow, 78 on Sunday. So great weekend ahead. And right now we are looking at 65 on 107.5 The Game.
Man, when I say the names, Demetrius Knight, Kyle Kennard, TJ Sanders, Tonka Hemingway, not only do you think about how good those players were on the football field and how vital they were to the success. I think Demetrius Knight's going to be remembered in Gamecock lore forever for the game-sealing interception in the 2024 game at Clemson. But one thing that if you covered that team that you heard so frequently, and if you followed that team that you heard so frequently, was about the leadership from those players. Nick Emenwari, obviously there too. He took that winning over to the NFL and ended up winning a Super Bowl in his first year. But the leadership on that team, or I guess 2 years later, the leadership on that team was so crucial to what they did. Shane talked about that so frequently in 2024. Can we get that again? That's one thing that's one of the big question marks for this team is, can you replicate that type of leadership? What does the leadership look like on the defensive side of the football, especially since you had so many new faces last year and you're going to have some new faces this year? Shane talked about that a little bit whenever he kicked off the spring football festivities earlier this week.
I was on that defense that have played a lot of football for us, and certainly you saw that, coming along last year. But we've got older guys. We're young in a lot of ways, but we got a lot of older guys on that defense. So whether it be, returning guys that have played a lot of football in that secondary, we've got 3, Fred and J.O. are young in some ways because it's only their 3rd year of college football, but they've played a lot of football. They're very much leaders. Sean Murphy's an older guy that, we popped up a picture in our special teams meeting today of Sean from high school, and we kind of made eye contact because I was at Oklahoma and went in his high school trying to recruit Sean. So he's played a lot of football for sure. And then up front, guys that are returning, but then we've brought in some guys from the portal that I think have some leadership qualities too along that defensive line. But yes, there's no question about it. You look at our 2024 team, you can sit there and say, man, Debo Williams, Demetrius Knight, Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley, those guys that had been around here for a while, they weren't here last year, and it showed in a lot of ways, and we need to make sure that we don't come out of the 26 season saying, man, the leadership needed to be a little bit better, and that's on all of us, starting with me as the head coach.
So, Preston, you heard Shane say even at the end, leadership needed to be a little better. But I think if you're looking for anywhere on the roster for that type of leadership that he alluded to in 2024, and that's the thing about that 2014, there were so many guys that you could allude to that I didn't even get to all of them, right? I didn't even get to Debo Williams or Boogie Huntley, and those guys definitely are part of that conversation too. You're looking at this roster and a lot of the guys that are returning, and you see maybe something that can be replicated like it was in 2024.
We'll see, because leadership is funny, and every team is different, and you got to figure out how the teams mesh with each other, what the chemistry is. I think the thing that cannot be taken for granted with those guys is, yes, obviously they were older, but they had also been involved with the program for several years. When you talk about Boogie, when you talk about TJ, Tonka, even Debo, who was a transfer, he had been there for 3 years. So you had these guys who were not only older, but they had been in the program for a long time. And then also, by all reports, they were all extremely high character type of players. So I just would be hesitant to say, oh, we got older, so we're going to have leadership. It's not, just because a dude's old doesn't mean he's a leader. And I think it still has to be, still have to have the right guys. It still has to be intentional from the coaching staff. So I think there's obviously a chance for that to happen with the linebackers because they're a year later, but it's still something that has to be intentionally done throughout spring practicing and fall camp.
Oh, certainly. That's what makes that question almost impossible to answer, especially when you don't know the people that are part of the discussion. But when you look at it and try to see if a history can repeat itself type scope, one thing that I look at that would give me an idea that it can happen is that not just that these guys are experienced, they've gotten the right and wrong experience. If you look at that 2024 team, guys like, Debo Williams, Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley, a lot of those guys were fresh off of a season where you went 5-7. And you were picked to be, second or third in the SEC East, and you were on the heels of an 8-win year. There is a little bit of a maybe history repeats itself level here, because I don't know if you are able to tap into a level of desperation or leadership like you do coming off of a year like that. And I think with a lot of the new guys came in, clearly you brought in the right character guys in that unit. But you also had a lot of guys that, played a lot of football for you, but also played a lot of football for you in a year in which it was really disappointing, and you went through some downs, especially on that defensive side of the ball. I still remember that Florida game where if you mention the name Graham Mertz to me, all I think of is that performance he had here in Columbia that fall, where he threw a bajillion yards, almost all of them to Ricky Pearsall, and then the defense got better after that. I think they had so many guys on that defense that learned some lessons the hard way and learned what it's like to lose in a year that you had a lot of expectation. And I think the one similarity this year is you've got a lot of guys on that defensive unit that are coming back that don't want to go 4-8 again. And they know what they did to help get to 4-8 and the things they maybe didn't do to get to 4-8, even though the defense wasn't really the thing that we point at as to why. These guys are all competitors. They don't want to have that happen again. So to me, if you bring in the right character guys and you feel great about the character of the guys that you brought in to be able to assist with that leadership, there's at least a framework of guys there who don't want to replicate what happened in 2025.
You know, Elijah, as you're talking, all I'm hearing is going let me jump in the Wayback Machine, way back to the year 1999, 2000, when I was coming into South Carolina, and there was a group of guys who had just went 0-11, and they were basically saying, like, we're not doing this again. This is what the standard is. This is how we're going to approach everything, and we are going to have a leadership standard because you young blood, we don't want you to ever feel like what it feels like to go 0-11, and I never did. And because of that those older guys getting that bad experience, they were able to translate it into the next year. So I think you're dead on when you talk about all experiences don't have to be good for them to count positively in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why, I guess, if you want to even draw parallels here to what the men's basketball team is facing, what the baseball team is facing, sometimes, especially with the men's basketball team, it was a true mass exodus of guys. I mean, you look at the guys that played meaningful minutes on that team that only won 2 SEC games last year. There's not a large number of them, right? It is a very small number that maybe when the majority of people on the team are people that have not been there for that, they don't know what it's like to experience that or what goes into maybe those type of failures until they experience it firsthand. The thing for the South Carolina defense specifically is that you have a lot of those guys that were here for the first year off the heels of a really good season and said, hey, look, we can't have this happen again. And I know they'll feel the sting of a 4-8 season, and for that, it's going to be a long off season. Without knowing these guys, you know, personally, it's at least one parallel that at least could lead me to believe that somebody's going to try to fill that leadership void. Now, offensively, a lot of people look at your quarterback as the main leader, but I think there is a superstar in sports right now that proved authenticity is the biggest key to that, and we'll tell you who that superstar is and what lessons we can learn from that coming up next here in the early game.
Pressure here for our friends at Absolute Glass, the premier glass company of the Midlands, offering auto, home, and business glass repair. If glass is damaged, shattered, cracked, or broken, they can handle the job. If it's a cracked windshield, that's no problem. They'll come out to your location and they'll replace it for you, usually for free, and they'll work directly with the insurance to take away the headache. They'll come out to wherever you are, school, home, work. It does not matter. Absolute Glass will come out to you and take care of the job for you. Now, if you're at home, you're looking to increase the value of your home, Absolute Glass can take care of that for you too. Windows, mirrors, shower enclosures. Say it all the time. If you can see through it, Ray and Marianne at Absolute Glass can do it. So check them out at AbsoluteGlassInc.com. That's online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com.
Boston Avenue and Highway 302 have a report of an accident there. Also, Browning Road near Burning Tree Road, kind of closer to Zimmelcrest. In the Hilton Chapin area, Sid Bickley Road near Chapin Road. And Wessinger Road at Old Lexington Highway. So Friday not starting off the best. Hopefully things will clear and get better as the morning rolls on. We're looking for a high today of 82. We'll get a little bit of morning fog that'll have to burn off. Then it'll be nice and sunny the rest of the day. 81 tomorrow, 78 on Sunday. And right now, it's pretty nice. 65 on 107.5 The Game.
When talking about leadership, can be kind of tricky because there's more than one way to do it. However, for quarterbacks, I think we learned in the college football season that authenticity is maybe the most important trait for a leader to have, especially at the quarterback position. Fernando Mendoza certainly proved that, and I think he's even caught the attention of a lot of players in the NFL, like Leonard Williams for the Seattle Seahawks. You mentioned his authenticity, even though he does come off kind of as a dork. It's still, players will find that maybe not necessarily endearing, but appreciative of you being who you are. And if you're not a rah-rah guy, then maybe playing that role isn't necessarily something for you because it can come off as inauthentic. Now, I don't want to accuse this superstar of being inauthentic because Aaron Judge could kill me with his bare hands. He's a big man. He's the best home run hitter in baseball. And he could probably throw me as far as he hits a baseball. But heading into the World Baseball Classic, he stood up in front of his team and delivered a message. And this is what it sounded like.
Sacrifice for your family at home, you're sacrificing for your country, and you're sacrificing for the brothers in the trenches with you every single day. And that's one thing I want us to do, fellas. You know, we're down, we're beat up a little bit, man. You know, lean into each other, man. We're gonna lay it all on the line. If we do that, we're bringing the goal home, man. I'm telling you.
And that has me ready to run through maybe not necessarily a brick wall, but like a styrofoam wall, you know, that's like styrofoam blocks. Not necessarily the most energetic thing.
Go team.
Go team. Yeah, if we do that, we can win the World Baseball Classic. Now, I don't want to say that Aaron Judge is inauthentic or what he's like in the locker room when he is putting on the pinstripes for the New York Yankees, but I think what this can illustrate is if that's not exactly your thing, talking in front of the team, you don't have to do it. Just because you are the best player, or maybe if you're in South Carolina's instance, if you are Lenore Sellers, the quarterback, maybe not what you have to do, because you can show leadership certainly in other different ways. And I think we've seen a lot of examples in pro sports where someone who's maybe not that kind of guy personality-wise tries to be, and it does come off as inauthentic in other situations, kind of like Russell Wilson.
It sounded like Aaron typed in, ChatGPT, I need a leadership speech, please, sir. Okay, Aaron, here you go. This one is about the World Series Baseball Classic, yeah? Yes. Okay, we're going to lay it on the line. We're going to do it for our country, the brotherhood. He said everything that you're supposed to say, and it just basically, man, it falls flat. And everybody who's been in the locker room knows the guy who is trying to be a leader, and nobody wants him to be a leader. We don't need that from you, Aaron. You just go hit home runs, play center field. We got some other guys who can handle the rah-rah locker room stuff. And everybody needs to know their place and where they fall in the locker room.
And what makes this so, like, I guess maybe applicable here is that, you know, a lot of people have discussed maybe Lenore Sellers' leadership or maybe questioned it, right? And my thing is, even if you're the quarterback, I think leading by example is equally as important as any type of vocal leadership. I think you should stay true to who you are, but leadership looks a lot different in different ways, especially when it comes to, hey, I'm getting the facility at 6 a.m. tomorrow to throw passes at a group text with receivers. I'll see you guys there, or something like that. You know, there's a lot of that you can do, right? There's a lot of that you can do that has equal value to just standing in front of the team and talking. And again, if that's not your thing, if you are a man of a few words, there are other avenues to go by, and you can still use whatever your personality or personality style is to be beneficial to you.
Yeah, I think anytime you see just the younger guys, they just see work ethic. I mean, right there, that translates, okay, I see what he's doing. He's putting in the time, and, man, he's really good. A plus B must equal C, you know?
Right. Yeah. You see that example. And, like, I mean, there's a guy like... go on, Preston.
I was going to say, Elijah, I think we can maybe change sports a little bit, but I think Steph Curry is the perfect example of this. He is unequivocally the best player on that team. But nobody doubts that Draymond, for good or bad, is the locker room leader, and that's fine, right? But we don't need Steph to be Draymond, and we don't need Draymond to be Steph, or even when they had Klay Thompson. Klay was the number 2 guy on the team, but he wasn't. He definitely, Klay was definitely not giving no locker room speeches, and it doesn't matter because that's not what we need from him. But we all recognize that he is the best player. He provides what he needs to provide on the court, and that's how teams should work.
Certainly. Klay Thompson, poor guy, he does look like he's one of the no thoughts, just vibes kind of guys on any type of team.
Always.
Wasn't he involved in the Kardashian clan at one time or something? Was he?
Maybe for a short time.
So that could beat you down right there if that was the case.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, I'm very studied in the Kardashian clan. He was in the periphery for a minute, but now he's dating Meg Thee Stallion, so he's moved on to another professional relationship.
I gotcha. Okay.
Wow. I mean, I think he made a good decision there.
Yeah, I think of the choices, I would get out of the. Yeah.
Get out of it if possible. But Elijah, this is my personal thing about quarterback. The quarterback needs to be able to drink a beer with fellas, but not drink 12.
Yeah, yes. Good rule. Well, it's fine. Be a part of the group, but not be the one that's raging. Don't be Johnny Manziel.
Exactly. And that's the fine line that the quarterback has. You got to be of the group, but you're also a little bit different from the group. And everybody needs to understand that and know that. And, but I don't know who said, hey, Aaron, we need you to go out there and poor Aaron, because he doesn't want to do that. That's not what he does not want to do that.
He did look uncomfortable. If you watch the video, he didn't look most comfortable.
He's twiddling thumbs. Elijah, you've never seen a man that's 6'8", 6'7", hand motion. You never seen him that tall look that small in a moment.
Right. And if he's normally like that in the New York Yankees locker room, or if he's not normally like that, maybe he just didn't get a good night's sleep. I don't know. I can't speak for it, but I just know he did not seem very comfortable in that situation, and that clip definitely made its rounds earlier this week. But why this, I think, discussion is so important is because for spring practice, especially if you are one of those lead by example guys, this is the time to set the tone, right? These 15 practices, the time to set the tone, getting there early, doing everything that you have to be doing to show what it takes to be part of something really successful, because it's not like Lenoris doesn't know. He was the quarterback on that team that won 9 games in 2024. If we can remember it, I know he sure remembers it. So he knows what it takes, in showing a lot of the guys, especially a lot of the newer players on that offense, which is a much newer unit, especially on the trenches, I think is something that's vitally important here early on in the spring before we even get to preseason fall practices. But coming up next, though, it has been a discouraging year and some change in men's athletics. But I want to pose a question on the other side about what brings you back. And we'll discuss that coming up next here in the early game. Look, you don't need me to tell you how tough of a year it's been in Gamecock athletics for the men's side, at least. Softball team did pretty well for themselves. They were inches away from the Women's College World Series. And, of course, Dawn's team is an absolute machine. But on the men's side, football, men's basketball, baseball, it's been very well documented how things have gone. And Inside the Gamecocks went and did a little bit of a deeper dig on it. Now updated, because I remember going to bed on the night of the Clemson basketball game, men's basketball game, and doing some totals and waking up to more Twitter notifications than I dreamed to wake up with. But it's gotten worse since then. But my question is, instead of relitigating all of that, and we have plenty of time to talk about how the basketball team can improve in the offseason, what the baseball team can do during the season. They have a 3-game series against Princeton over the weekend. I do want to pose a question, though, and this is more so just to get into the fan psyche here of Gamecock Nation. But what brings you back? And even though it gets rough, why do you still care? Because I've seen a lot of different fan bases just in the course of my life, and I don't know if there's a more dedicated one than South Carolina, because Williams-Brice Stadium in a 4-8 season, packed, even in a game against Coastal Carolina. The investment in the basketball team, still, after the season they've had, still getting calls and still getting a lot of texts in the midst of this type of season. Baseball, the passion that you have after, dropping 2-3 to Clemson or having a disappointing midweek series. What does bring you back to the ballpark, to the arena, to Willie B? That's one thing that I've always wanted to know. In terms of what makes you still so dedicated to this team. And maybe it helps that I've started Ted Lasso this week, and maybe I've been a little more positive than normally, because this is the most Ted Lasso type question I could possibly ask. But Preston, that's one thing I'm very curious about, is college sports survives on fan enthusiasm and fan support. What keeps you supporting this athletic department?
This is obviously a huge meta type question. But I think if I had to answer this in a big way, I would point to 2 people who passed in the last 2 weeks. One, Jesse Jackson, keep hope alive. Mm-hmm. Keep hope alive. There's always going to be a hope that things can get better in the future. And then Lou Holtz. That time period, what we're finding out is how important the idea of this place can be better. We can have nice things. We can change. Why not us? And if you look at all the stories that people are telling about Coach Holtz, he's talking about that. They're all talking about he gave us something to believe in. He gave us an opportunity to feel like we're legit. And I do think there's always something about cheering for the underdog. And we're perennially the underdog here. And I think there's a quality to that is endearing. I mean, again, you can ask those folks in the perp pants. Obviously, it was great to win all those times, but they're miserable now, right? Mm-hmm. They're miserable, and there's something about always having to climb up the hill that, I don't know, that not to get too philosophical, but I do think that's like one of the best parts of the human condition is like, man, there's always a place that we can go, and there's still space there. And so I think there's a lot to that where folks have an idea that this can happen at some point. Maybe some point in the future, I might not be here. It might be for my kids. Like Jen understands that. Jen, as a Cubs fan, you get it, right?
Oh, yeah. No, in a big way. But if it got too easy, I mean, yeah, you like winning. But to me, it's almost like if you have so much money, I'd like to experiment with this, but
yeah, I would like to know what that feels like.
But at some point, it's like, now what? Like, what's the next pinnacle? Right. If you've already hit the pinnacle, now what? So, yeah, right. I think it's great to win. I think you appreciate it more if it doesn't happen year after year after year.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too, yesterday, can I go back to Preston's point, too? I was just thinking about this in terms of how low things were. Like, Albert texted into the Firehouse Subs text line yesterday talking about Lou Holtz's impact. And he said, unless you were here in the late 90s, which I was barely here on planet Earth, so I can't speak for that. But he mentioned how miserable of a feeling it felt and how down everybody was, which, of course, when you lose every single game that you play in a football season, you're going to feel incredibly down. But the level of hope that even just an 8-win turnaround the next year gave them, I think it does show proof that it can indeed turn around. And at least, like on the football side specifically, I think most people are very confident that this thing can be turned around because we've seen some proof of concept there. Because we ran a poll question earlier in the week about which sport do you think can turn around or have the, the highest likelihood of turning it around. And it was very easily the football team, right? I think they took like 70+% of the vote there. And I think it certainly can happen. But winning like that, if you win all the time, definitely takes away a little bit of the joy. And I think there is something to be said about continuing to hope. And for when that does eventually happen, it does really pay off.
And I think that's the thing that you're always in it for is the payoff. When, and you have little payoffs along the way. Like we said, in the most Gamecock way, things happen along the way where it's like, oh, man, that was so fun, or that was the thing that keeps me back. And so there are a lot of, and it's obviously frustrating right now because the program is in a very difficult spot and there needs things that need to be changed, rearranged, and we can do a lot better than what we're doing right now. I 100% believe that. But also, you still have to feel like, hey, man, if we can tweak this, hit that, we can still be on our way. And I think that's what you always have to have, just a little bit. They say the hope kills you, but it's also the thing that keeps you going.
Yeah, it certainly does. Shannon texted on the Firehouse Subs text line right now. Says, my blood runs garnet and black. Always support my Gamecocks. By the way, on my way to Greenville. Shannon, I'll be right behind you once I get off the air here at 9, and I'll get there probably about 30 minutes or so, I guess, before the game starts.
Not to give away my location, but I'm rumored to be on 385 right now.
Rumored to be, yes.
Rumored to be on 385 right now. Not to give away my direct location, but we are rumored to be on 385. Going deep into enemy territory today.
Ooh, if you read that on a message board, there may be smoke to that, according to our Preston Thorne. I really want to take Hank's call. Hank, if you can hold on, because we're about to get a hard out here, and the rumor around here has it that if I miss the hard out, I will get zapped.
And I'm ready.
And Jen's got the button, and I don't want to experience any type of electrical shock today. But I do love to hear, I guess, people's perspective as to what brings you back still to the ballpark, to the field, to the arena, despite things maybe not going as well as it has been in the past. And where do you get that hope from? And sometimes that's kind of the best part about collegiate sports, is that your loyalty runs so deep that even in really bad years, it doesn't completely drive you away because of the connection you have. And I think that's maybe the biggest difference between college sports and pro sports. It's easy to check out on a pro sport, right? A lot less whenever you've attended the school or have that level of emotional connection to it. Preston Thorne, wherever you may be, rumored to be, you enjoy the rest of your day. You have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you again on Monday, sir.
Appreciate y'all as always. See y'all on Monday.
That's right. Hour
Sounds
number
good.
2 is coming up next. We're going to get Hank on the phone as well as discuss what the South Carolina backfield is going to look like and what can give you hope that they can have a great season. Coming up next.
Preston here for our friends at Integrated Media. Listen, the big games are coming. We're already starting the big tournament here with women. We have the big men's basketball tournament, big golf tournament on the way. Why wouldn't you want to be set up with the folks from Integrated Media to get your outdoor setup ready? We knew the spring was coming, and the spring is here. Get your Samsung Terrace TVs that are waterproof, Wi-Fi that works indoor and outdoor, so you can have all the games playing on all the devices without any lag time. So you can have your iPad, your laptop, your phone, all that playing, and you can be watching them all at the same time. Quad boxing on YouTube TV? Absolutely. Call the folks from Integrated Media. They can help you get set up. Nathan and Michael at 803-948-8327. That's Integrated Media at 803-948-8327. Or you can reach them online at integratedmediainc.com.
Downtown Columbia, we have a report of an accident. Assembly at Blossom. There's also an accident in Boston Avenue at Highway 302. Still working Browning Road near Burning Tree Road. Sid Bickley Road near Chapin Road. And Wessender at Old Lexington Highway. So multiple accidents out there. Hope your Friday morning goes fairly well on the highways. As far as your forecast goes, yeah, it's looking pretty darn nice. 83 for the high today. 82 tomorrow, Sunday, looking for maybe an isolated afternoon storm, but still a high of about 82.
Hour number 2 of the early game starts right now. I'm Elijah Campbell. She is Jen Jensen. We are waiting for Nick Harvey to enter the studio here for hour number 2. But we can go ahead and go out to the AAA Heating and Air phone lines, because to kick off hour number 2, we can continue what we were talking about to end hour number 1, which is the question that I posed as to what brings you back to South Carolina athletics, even in years in which things aren't going really well, even if the basketball team has won 5 SEC games in the last 2 years, or the baseball team had a historic disappointment last season, or the football team goes 4-8, right? This is, at least in my experiences, limited experience. I've only been on this earth for 3 decades. In the grand scheme of things, not very long. This is an incredibly devoted fan base, and it's one of those, there's still so much care with the programs, even when things don't go very well. And you see in pro sports all the time, people check out. and people even quit caring about talking about it. I remember there was Jen, if I'm not wrong, there was like a podcast with the Carolina Panthers. It was like a fan podcast, and they got so tired of covering losing or talking about losing that they quit.
That's a loser mentality right there if you quit the podcast.
And they quit it. They quit. But in South Carolina athletics, it's a little different. There's still a ton of care and a ton of desire. And there's still so much, maybe if hope's the right word, I don't know. Optimism, I don't know. But we'll go out to the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Hank is on the line. And Hank, we told you to get to you first, so you're leading us off here in this hour.
Hey, Elijah. I'll tell you what it is with the Carolina fans. I sat through, been through many decades of being a Carolina fan, and going through the 1-10 and then 0-11, because some people forget that there was a 1-10 the year right before the 0-11. It got to a point where the only thing that the people on the TV could talk about was the fact that the fans came back and they were packing out the stadium. And so every game became a Super Bowl. You were 0-11, but you were like, if we could just get this win, that's going to be the one that we celebrate. And so that's one part of it. It's kind of like, I guess you say like a Chicago Cubs fan. You're always looking for that one breakthrough. But then the other part of it is kind of like the periods of success. Because you think about the football, you had the Holtz when he came in after the 1-10 and 0-11, and you had that breakout year, and you beat Ohio State back-to-back, and then you kind of go down. But you know there's something possible there. And then Spurrier comes in, and you're beating everybody in the SEC pretty bad. There were a couple of buzzard luck games that kept them out of the SEC championship those years when they went 10-2, 11-2, 11-2, whatever. Same thing with basketball. When basketball was struggling on the street, Newton, then you win the SEC when Fogler comes in, and you have one of the most feared basketball teams was the 2 seed twice in the tournament. And then even during the older years, you go to back-to-back NIT championships, but people don't remember those back-to-back championship years. One of the years Florida won the national championship. Carolina beat Florida, was the only team to beat Florida in the SEC during the regular season, and came within it. Florida ended up beating Carolina by 2 in the SEC championship game that would have sent Carolina to the tournament. And then the baseball's won 2 championships. So it's kind of like that. Carolina's always had a point, just like 2 years ago with football, where it gives you just enough to say, keep hope alive. So.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that perspective, Hank, for sure. And that's kind of what Preston was talking about in the last segment, too, is finding a way to keep that hope alive. And you've seen it happen. Like Lou Holtz, proved it can happen on the football field. Eddie Fogler in men's basketball proved it can happen. And then Frank McGuire, decades before that, proved that you can be successful. And then obviously we know what the history is with baseball. Like, that it can happen. And I think when you do experience a lot of those lows that Hank was talking about, once you do get that proof of concept, it is exciting. It keeps you around. And we can talk, about the chicken curse and stuff all day. And I can make jokes about saging the football facility or CLA or all of that. There's still things that can keep you coming back because you do find that proof of concept here and there. And I still love making this like a Jen Jensen Cubs example, because how good did it feel when it finally did happen? If the Cubs were just winning World Series every year, or they were contending for it and they've won, that was like their third, it wouldn't have meant as much. But no. I think there probably wasn't a championship in all of sports, college or pro maybe, that meant more to its fan base than the Chicago Cubs.
Oh, it was huge. And the way it happened, went down to Game 7. I mean, everything just made it amazing, And so it feels good. Yeah, I think you win 3 times, in 10 years. You're still really excited, but by the third one, it's like, okay, we're expecting it. And then you become a spoiled fan.
Exactly.
And we've talked about that with, maybe fans in the upstate or something.
That's why I would like to poll Boston sports fans, because now that the Red Sox broke their curse over 20 years ago, they've won a few since then. Clearly, the New England Patriots became like the gold standard of dynasties in that sport. The Boston Bruins have won one since then. Like there was at one point, like 3 or 4 years ago, and the Celtics have won 2 in my lifetime. That like if you were someone my age in 2021, how many championship parades you could have experienced? It's insane. And obviously winning might never get old, but it might not mean the same for when it happens the first time. And we'll go back out to the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Thank you again for the call, Hank. We'll go to Mike, who has been waiting patiently. Good morning, Mike. Welcome to the early game.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Fantastic. How are you this morning?
Hey, good. So I want to answer your question. I think maybe you touched on it a little bit. I think what keeps me coming back as a Gamecock fan is, I guess that hope, if you have a bad day as a person, you don't give up. You just keep coming back, and you put in whatever you do what you got to do to make things better. And, or if you are training for something, if you don't reach your goal, you keep putting in work to get better. So I guess as a fan, I'm hopeful, expecting that, whatever team is struggling, football, basketball, baseball, whatever, that they're going to put in the work, to get better, and that the administration is going to support them in that effort. And so, that's really what keeps me going back, just the hope that, and also that, back like in baseball, you said you've seen it before. In football, you've seen it a little bit before. That, we'll get back to that level. We know what some of the things that we need to do to get back to that.
Certainly. And I think, maybe like for this year too, one of the reasons why there's going to be some anticipation for the season, even coming after or on the heels of a 4-8 year, is that you won 9 games just 2 years ago, right? We're all old enough to remember that. And I think that's a fair enough reason to be able to bring you back. Certainly appreciate the call there, Mike. I agree with a lot of that too. And I think there's a FOMO element of this too, where if you've been there for all the bad times, once the good times happen, you don't want to miss out on that, right? You still want to be able to be a part of that. I think sports FOMO and fandom FOMO is a real thing right there. And going to the Firehouse Subs text line, Jeff says, been a Gamecock fan since I was a kid, got to go to practice and meet George Rogers back in the day. Season tickets in the 80s. Unfortunately, I have been priced out for years. Family has to be the priority. Football is my main thing. Baseball is a close second. A lifetime of memories, some good, some not so much. I think that's, Jeff, that's a really good text because that's life sometimes too, right? A lot of good memories, some not so much. And I think a lot of fans too, like Jeff, are maybe a little frustrated about getting priced out, and there's a real issue with that in college sports right now too. Part of what makes college sports as soulful as it is access and decades and really generations of bringing families to the games. A lot of people that you talk to who have been SEC sports fans in their towns, they've gone to games because their parents took them to games and their grandparents took their parents to the games, and it's one of those things that just goes through generations. It's hard to just give up on that too. And there's an element of that where we're kind of losing in sports because tickets are so expensive, and college athletics is such a money-making business too, that there's the balance that has to be struck between running a business while also keeping around and engaged a fan base who has been giving you money for not just a majority of their lives, but their families' existences too. And then for the funniest text of the day, Rick on the Firehouse Subs text line says, the reason I come back to South Carolina sports is I hate orange and Clemson. I'd rather lose than wear purple or orange. And I think hatred's probably a good motivating factor there. But for the football team this year, one of the more interesting things, I think one of the interesting elements of trying to bounce back from last year is finding the run game and being a lot more dominant in the run game. And the biggest mystery that we're going to be talking about in spring practice is going to be what the backfield does look like for South Carolina. Now, in 2024, having Rocket Sanders as the bell cow back turned out to be a really good offensive identity, right? You had a go-to runner to be able to hand the ball off to, who was an efficient runner, great after contact, and that was a big recipe towards your success. One of the big recipes of getting to 9 wins was the reliability of someone like Rocket Sanders in your backfield, and you didn't have that this year. And when we look at what's going down in the backfield to go into this upcoming season, you have Matt Fuller, who's had some flashes. Jawarn Howell, haven't seen a ton of, but then you look at some of the transfer guys, you got 3 dudes in the transfer portal that have the potential tag, right? You brought in running backs from Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas. that's about as good of a 3 places you can bring in running backs from. Even if they haven't had a ton of carries in their career or they're incredibly inexperienced, there is a lot of value to bringing those guys in, but there's a good chance that we end up seeing more split backfield action. For some people, that's going to be a deterrent when it comes to feeling optimistic about your prospects in 2026. But I did find some examples in college football this past year of split backfields with inexperienced running backs that turned out to be pretty good, right? Looking at Georgia Tech as the first example, that was one of the best rushing attacks in the country, and really their quarterback ran for the most yards on that team in Haynes King. But you look at Malachi Hosley and Jamal Haynes. Hosley really ran for fewer than 100 carries, but he still picked up 697 yards, scored 7 touchdowns, ran for over 7 yards a carry. Jamal Haynes did get over 100 carries in the season. Wasn't as effective a runner, but Malachi Hosley really kind of stepped up and ended up being the more efficient runner of the two in that split backfield. And that was Hosley's first year at the FBS level. And if you look at Oregon, Oregon had 3 dudes who carried the ball at least 75 times. 2 of them were freshmen. Now, Oregon recruits at such a level that those guys like Jordan Davison and Deere Hill were some of the best, running backs in their class. And then, but I think maybe the most replicable one is somebody like Texas Tech. Texas Tech had 2 running backs, and Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey coming into the year, and neither of them had more than 41 career attempts, and they split those carries not almost evenly, but Jacoby Williams got 155 carries. Cameron Dickey ran 209 times. They both had really big seasons where Dickey ran for over 1,000 yards. Jacoby Williams ran for over 800. It was a split backfield. Those are 3 different teams that completely split carries in the backfield with various instances of experience. So when you look at experience and total career carries, maybe there's not a direct correlation to being a really good running game the next year. But there is a way to be able to split those in your backfield instead of having just one dominant rusher of the football, where you can split carries between 2 or 3 running backs and still make it work. Again, we're going to be relating the whole running game idea to how well the offensive line performs. Same thing with the passing game. I don't think we can have a discussion as to what the offense is going to look like in 2026 without beginning the conversation with the offensive line, and everything else kind of falls in after that. But if you're able to establish at least a good zone blocking scheme or a good running scheme, and they are able to execute that on the line of scrimmage, you have a good batch of potential in your backfield, even if the experience and the overall career production hasn't been there, where you could find maybe 2 or 3 guys that you can rely on to carry the ball. And even if you don't have someone who's going to carry it 20 times in a game, I don't think that's completely detrimental to what you have in terms of prospects for your offense in 2026. But coming up next, it's the early game morning meeting, and there's a whole lot to get to in Gamecock Athletics. It's a very busy week in Gamecock Athletics. We'll get to that for the early game morning meeting coming up next. Elijah here for my friends at Ecton Law Firm. Look, if tax issues, whether it's business or personal income tax issues, have been a little bit of a struggle for you, or you find yourself getting caught in that pesky IRS maze and tax season isn't very kind to you, well, John Ecton and his team at the Ecton Law Firm are here to help you out with that and take one step closer to living a worry-free life. Now, my favorite thing about them is that you can set up a free consultation, 803-771-9800. Give that call a day, talk to John and his team at the Ecton Law Firm, and pick their brain with their decades of experience in handling this type of law in the state of South Carolina. And it's a team that is perfectly qualified to offer you the peace of mind that you deserve, because they have been working with thousands of families and businesses just like yours escape that pickle known as the IRS maze. Take that step today. Give them a call, 803-771-9800. You can always visit them online, too, at ectonlawfirm.com. That's ECTONlawfirm.com.
Assembly at Blossom, still working that earlier accident. Also Boston Avenue at Highway 302. A slowdown I-20 eastbound at Highway 601. That would be exit 92. An accident there. I-26 westbound at Lake Murray Boulevard and in the Chapin-Hilton area. Sid Bickley Road near Chapin Road. So a few accidents. Oh, my. Okay. The end of the week is coming. Oh, or is here. A couple of things you need to watch out for. We'll just say that. But weather-wise, 83 is going to be our high today. 83 tomorrow. Might see an isolated afternoon storm on Sunday and a high of 82. 66 with clouds right now.
Busy weekend in Gamecock athletics. The men's basketball team has their regular season finale in Oxford against Ole Miss. I will say that is a more winnable game than we probably would have thought it would be at the beginning of the year. Ole Miss has been one of the SEC's biggest disappointments. Women's team will be in Greenville. I will be in Greenville later today to cover that game against Kentucky in the quarterfinals, and I'll be providing coverage on our YouTube page as well as on our social medias, and that's going to be sponsored by Griffin Pools and Spas. And on the Diamond at Founders Park, we have a doubleheader Saturday, a series finale on Sunday against Princeton. Thankfully, this is not a battle of who has the highest team SAT scores.
Ooh, yeah.
Because not many people are going to beat Princeton. But this game is played on the Diamond. They're going to be playing baseball. And we'll be talking about our goals for the series here for today's morning meeting.
Good morning. Good morning. Repeat after me. Today will be an awesome day. Let's go. Good morning, great today. Today will be an awesome day. Good morning, great today. Today will be an awesome day.
Today will be an awesome day. And not just because we're going to be talking a little bit baseball here for the morning meeting, but because the Ticket Fairy has once again made an appearance. I never see the Ticket Fairy come in. I never do. I don't know if Jen does. Jen gets the directives, but I don't actually see the Ticket Fairy.
I don't actually see the Ticket Fairy. The messages come to me, and just sort of we need some kind of a fun sound effect for the Ticket Fairy.
We do, yes.
I'll have to work on that.
Yeah, we find us a good sound effect. If we're not going to be able to see the Ticket Fairy,
Yeah.
being able to hear it, because my fate rests on whether or not I give away these tickets or not.
Right.
So
Very important.
if I'm going to be fearful of something, fearful of my life, I'd at least like to know what my opponent here looks like. However, the Ticket Fairy did give directive to Jen Jensen that we have 2 family 4-packs of game number 2 tomorrow. So the 4:30 game against Princeton. Call 803-404-6100. If you are callers 3 and 4, you will get a family 4-pack of tickets to the game tomorrow at 4:30. Now, it's 2 games. This will be game 2 of that doubleheader.
Seats will be warmed up for you.
They will be. They'll be nice warm, and it'll be a fantastic day tomorrow, too.
Oh, man. It'll be beautiful.
And I don't think this is fake spring either. I think we're getting real spring right now.
Getting pretty close. We're getting close to the first day of spring, and I think Mother Nature is starting to cooperate. I'm good with that.
So we had, a couple weeks ago, we had maybe that 70-degree day.
Yeah.
And then it got cold again.
Yeah.
Don't think we're getting that anymore.
I think so. I think you're right. I'm hoping, I'm not a meteorologist, but you don't really have to be right to be one, but,
No, yeah. I mean, look,
Bless 'em.
I take whatever's on my phone. I know, going into the Clemson series last weekend, I said, I'm looking at the forecast right now. Rain should stop at noon. Guess what didn't stop at noon?
No.
The rain.
No.
So, and did I feel bad about that? No, because the professionals get it wrong too. So
Yep.
why should I be expected to bat 1,000 there?
Yeah, bingo. So, okay, well, I'll see if I can't give some tickets away.
That's right. That's
All right.
right. It's going to be
Thank you,
great
sir.
weather, and I don't care what that stupid groundhog has to say. But what goals do I have for this team against Princeton over the weekend? Obviously, the one is to win all of the games. Duh. Anybody can sit here and say that your goal for the series should be to win both games on Saturday and to win on Sunday. But I do have in front of me a list of 6 objectives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, because if I did, it wouldn't be the first time I have miscounted something on this program. But 6 things that I want to see this team do against Princeton to make me feel like they are turning the corner. Now, look, they did lose 2 of 3 to Clemson. Preston and I talked about this is the biggest stretch of your season so far. Yes, it is a bit, but there's also some truth to the bit. And it's 5 games against mid-major opponents, against 5 games against 3 mid-major opponents. You took care of the 2 weekday ones, right? You were able to handle USC Upstate with some big innings later on in the game. Love that. You were able to take care of Charleston Southern, who has actually been playing some pretty good baseball this year. Love that. But you got to be able to handle Princeton here these 3 games, and there are some things that I want to see in totality of these 3 games. The first one, less than an error per game. I'll give you 1 mess up a game. This is college baseball after all. These guys aren't professionals. Errors will happen, but don't make too many of them to where you have to put more pressure on a batting lineup that after the Clemson series was below 300 on the season. I like to see you have less than an error per game. If you just have 1 each game, I can live with it. Baseball, again, a game of failure, but can you limit the mistakes in the field? Number 2, I want the starters to go at least 4 full innings. I don't want to see any of your weekend pitchers here against Princeton who has struggled this year, going out there and getting run from the game less than 4 innings in. I'm giving it 4. Usually I would say 5 or 6, but I do know with how you're having to manage pitch counts and manage your arms here for the more important games in the season, I do understand that if a pitch count gets a little high, I can live with getting them out early and then maybe dipping into your bullpen and seeing what some of those guys have and working out roles in your bullpen. But yeah, you go at least 4 innings. So my standard here is going at least 4 full innings here for these starting outings. Sticking with the number 4, I also want to see no more than 4 walks in any game. Even 4 is a little bit higher for me. And I'm one of those big proponents of my favorite pitching stat isn't ERA, isn't even necessarily strikeouts. It's cool if you can strike out a lot of batters. But how many walks or hits do you give up each inning? WHIP, walks, hits per innings pitched, is the one that I value the most. And walks are a big part of that. Can you keep yourself under 4 walks in all of these games? Can you show that the control can be there, especially for someone like Riley Goodman, where the stuff looks really good, man? He's hitting 97 on the gun. The velocity's there, but the control is a must because all of that cool velocity stuff and all of everything else doesn't matter if you can't hit the strike zone. So let's hit the strike zone this weekend. I also want to see over 8 hits per game. This is going to be one of the worst pitching staffs I think you're going to see for the rest of the season because you're going to be getting into SEC play, and there are not many bad pitching staffs that you're going to be facing. Can you tee off on an opponent who can be teed off on? So I'm putting that number in terms of an expectation at over 8 hits per game. Over the weekend, I'd like to see 3 home runs. Get you a home run per game. I know that home runs aren't necessarily the best indicator of how healthy your offense is because there are teams that are very feast or famine, and I hate strikeouts at the plate more than anything else. I'm not a believer in Keith Law's an out is an out is an out, and that all outs are created equally. They are not to me. Strikeouts are much more of a negative than any other out you can get, but can you get at least 3 home runs? Again, a pitching staff that I think you can tee off on. Can you send more than 3 balls out of the park? And the last one, fighting fatigue. Yes, the last time we had a doubleheader as a part of a weekend series, we were citing fatigue as a reason why you dropped the third one. We're going to have a doubleheader on Saturday, and we're going to play a finale on Sunday. After the first 2 games, after your doubleheader, can you be fresh? Can you beat the fatigue allegations, right? Baseball team's going to be in court this weekend, and the allegations are fatigue after doubleheaders. Can you beat those charges? That is what I am looking for this baseball team. So the 6 things, less than an error per game. Starters go at least 4 full innings. No more than 4 walks in any game. Can you get over 8 hits per game? 3 home runs for the weekend, at least. And then can you fight the fatigue of having to play a series finale after a doubleheader? You should be able to. You're getting a redemption opportunity from that Northern Kentucky series. Can you have a complete weekend? I think that's what all Gamecock fans are hoping for in the weekend series against Princeton. But coming up next, my man Matt Brown. He does the Extra Point newsletter, not to be confused with Tyler Head's The Extra Point. But Matt Brown did the Lord's work in proving a major flaw in college sports scheduling. And I'll tell you what he found, and I'll tell you why it matters coming up next here in the early game.
So are you looking for a countertop for a kitchen or a bathroom? Well, I'm telling you, the place to go is Carolina Stone Craftsman, just outside Columbia, in shape, and they get it. They know that these processes and these projects, like kitchen and bath projects, can be a significant investment, but they do really work hard to deliver the highest quality, most affordable granite, marble, and quartz while still providing the best customer service. And I'm telling you, it's really simple. Great countertops, no compromises. Rebecca and Ethan were so helpful to us. We checked out their showroom, which is absolutely beautiful. Their indoor and their outdoor showrooms are fabulous. And they helped us through the process to figure out what it was that we wanted for those bathroom countertops. And every step of the process was great. If you're in the market for countertops for your kitchen, for your bath, reach out to Carolina Stone Craftsman. Be sure to tell them Jen Jensen sent you. They are family owned and operated just beyond Columbia and Chapin and beyond your expectations. Visit them online, carolinastonecraftsman.com. Assembly at Blossom Street. That's currently closed, according to Columbia Police Department, due to an accident. So Assembly at Blossom, going to want to divert and find another route in that area. Garners Ferry Road near Atlas Road, an accident there. Also I-20 eastbound at Highway 601. That's exit 92 on I-20 eastbound. An accident I-26 westbound at Lake Murray Boulevard. And one more to let you know about, and that's Shop Road at Pineview. And, yeah, we can't complain about the weather. 83 today. Clouds will make way for some sun. Tomorrow, 83, 82 on Sunday. Maybe an isolated afternoon shower or a storm. But right now, it's a little bit cloudy and 66.
Miami, Ohio Redhawks. Not only the story in college basketball right now because they are one more win away from finishing a completely unblemished regular season. They have to go on the road to Athens, Ohio, and play the Ohio Bobcats. And if they win that game and they take care of business, they will have a perfect regular season. However, I never thought I would have a discussion, professionally or even non-professionally, about a team that is 30-0 being on the bubble if they don't win their conference tournament. It's created some really weird discourse. You have Bruce Pearl shamelessly going on TV and saying, you know, teams like Auburn, coached by his son, deserve to be in over somebody like Miami of Ohio. Auburn, who is sitting at 16-14 right now, and lobbying for them to get in because we played a hard schedule. We have the #1 strength of schedule. Yeah, we've only won more than half our games, a little more than half our games, but we played a really hard schedule.
They're related to Vic Schaefer?
Yeah, they might be. There might be some family ties there. I don't know.
Just saying.
If maybe not family by blood, family by choice. And it's created this really messy schedule discourse because people say, oh, look at Miami, Ohio's schedule. They played multiple non-Division I opponents. If they wanted to be in the conversation, they should schedule a little better outside of their conference. Maybe they should work a little bit harder to schedule good teams in November and December. Well, Matt Brown, who does his Extra Point newsletter, and the man is a FOIA machine. There may be no more of a sports journalist who is more familiar with the Freedom of Information Act than Matt Brown, because he did a little bit of a dive. He sent out a lot of FOIA requests and put together a really large deep dive on Miami of Ohio's efforts to schedule better, because Matt's like the rest of us. He hears the discussion. He also finds it a little odd that we have a 30-0 team in college basketball, and if they want to make the NCAA tournament, they are still expected to win their conference tournament, despite winning everything else. So he found out. What he learned was Miami, Ohio sent out over 70 invitations and requests to play Power 4 conference teams in their non-con. Now, not everybody responds, but he did find out by looking through university emails that there were a large amount of teams that straight up declined to play them. The headliners here, if you look at Matt Brown's tweet, Pittsburgh, BYU, Ohio State, Kansas. I think that would boost up the strength of schedule a little bit.
And so they're trying to play them.
And Travis Steele, the head coach for Miami of Ohio, has been saying, I've been trying to schedule these games. Our strength of schedule isn't bad because I wanted it to be bad. There was an effort, and teams declined to play them. And that's the big flaw in college sports scheduling. I don't think this is just isolated to basketball. There's problems in different sports. Each sport kind of has its own scheduling issue. But in college basketball specifically, you see a lot of teams that will send out emails saying, hey, we want to play somebody with a net ranking of 250 or lower. They don't want to play teams in between a certain range in net, which is where a team like Miami of Ohio would fall. Because you might be listening to this and you're thinking, why would anybody duck Miami of Ohio? Why is that smoke that somebody doesn't want to have, especially in a year in college basketball where you maybe had the best non-conference slate maybe of all time? I know it's prisoner of the moment type thinking, but we had some really great non-conference games, some marquee matchups in non-conference. Well, here's the issue. A lot of teams in the Power 4 want to schedule teams good enough to where just scheduling them improves your net ranking. They also want to schedule teams just bad enough to where it is a guaranteed win. And if you're in the middle, kind of like a lot of teams in the MAC are, because the MAC, even though it is down this year, has teams that can beat a Power 4 opponent at any given time, on any given Tuesday or Wednesday night in November or December. Kent State's usually always pretty good. Ohio's had some really good teams. They've had some really impressive non-conference wins in the past. Kent State has always had some decent teams. But Miami of Ohio is kind of just a reflection of a larger problem in college basketball. People just don't want to play them because they are not bad enough to risk losing, not good enough to get credit in the net rankings for just playing the game. And if you beat them, well, you're expected to beat them. And if you lose to them, it's going to hurt you. And that makes total sense. And if college coaches in the Power Four leagues want to band together, not band together, there's no sort of collusion going on here, but if they're all kind of having the same groupthink of taking that approach to scheduling and trying to play the system a certain way, I don't blame them. Their jobs rely on making the NCAA tournament or not making the NCAA tournament.
Exactly.
There are coaches right now that are on the hot seat because they have failed to get to an NCAA tournament or they've missed for a few years. So jobs are on the line here. I totally get it. But one thing that I think must change is, A, just the regular acceptance of this reality. And then B, applying that acceptance and applying that reality to making the decisions of your postseason. And that's why something like Wins Above Bubble was created, because it takes into perspective what your schedule was and would the average team be able to win more than that. And if you look at Miami, Ohio's Wins Above Bubble, they've now cracked the top 30. And that number is now north of 3, meaning the average bubble team with Miami of Ohio's weak schedule wouldn't be undefeated. As a matter of fact, they would have caught 3 losses because that's basketball. The fact that they are undefeated right now is wild to me. And I think Miami, Ohio is a good team, but they're not 2012 or 2013, 2014 Wichita State, who went undefeated in their regular season in the Missouri Valley. They're not 2004 St. Joe's, who went undefeated for a large portion of the season in the A-10. They're not those two teams. And do I think Miami, Ohio has a chance to make the Final Four? No, I don't. I think they have a ceiling of Sweet 16. But the fact of the matter is, you win all your games. Yes, because if they lose in the MAC tournament after having an undefeated regular season, what message are you sending? Especially when they tried to schedule the games. It's not, their schedule is not a result of a lack of effort when it comes to scheduling these things. And Travis Steele's been on record by saying, I was worried if we'd have a complete season because scheduling was so hard this offseason. Taking that into account is every bit as valuable as taking into account somebody's strength of schedule. And I do have a feeling that Miami of Ohio trips up in the conference tournament. That's how these things happen. That's how these things always happen, right? Is that they get really close to making it a no-doubter, and basketball happens, especially this team. They've played a lot of close games. At some point, something's not going to go your way. Something out of your control might happen. A half-court buzzer beater. We actually saw that in Holy Cross and Lehigh last night. Lehigh had a half-court buzzer beater to beat Holy Cross at the end of the game. Yeah.
That's fun.
In the Patriot League tournament to keep their season alive. You see that type of stuff happen all the time. And one thing I think that when it comes into these committee rooms to field a tournament, whether it's the NCAA men's or women's basketball tournament or the college football playoff, sometimes we get so hung up on strength of schedule that we might not even take into account somebody's attempt to do it and then still punishing them for winning, making this ultimately a lose-lose for a large portion of Division I. But coming up next, Ray is on the phone. We'll get to Ray on the other side. We'll also take a look at this weekend's regular season finale for the men's team as they travel to Oxford, Mississippi to round out their regular season. We'll do that next to round out hour number 2. 803-404-6100. That's the magic number to call on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines to be able to chime in. And our man Ray is on the line with us this morning. Good morning, Ray. Welcome back to the early game, my friend.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely, loud and clear.
Yeah, talking about the committee and the basketball and that type of thing. It is such a crapshoot. And what I'm getting at is you could play the toughest conference in America. I mean, just say like South Carolina, the SEC was this year, or maybe it was like last year.
Last year,
play
yeah,
18
definitely.
Games, go 11-7, right? And somehow your non-conference schedule didn't match up. Maybe you had some teams that just didn't perform like they normally do, and they don't totally hold that against you. And I've seen times you could schedule a bunch of blue bloods, and they just had down years. And I've seen teams schedule a bunch of mid-majors who had good years, and they have a tougher, non-conference schedule. So I think it's a very flawed system. And I think about that team that Martin had a few years back. It won, I think, 25 games or 24 games and got left out because of non-conference. And he actually scheduled some really good teams that just had bad years and got totally punished. So I think the whole non-conference strength of schedule is way overrated in my opinion, but that's just all I got to say.
Certainly, I appreciate the call, Ray. And Ray, the thing is too, is it's an inexact science because for what you just mentioned, some wins are going to age better than others, right? You may schedule a team like, I don't know, let's just use Wichita State. It's one of the early ones on, examples on my mind of teams that have had really good years. It's a program that's seen a lot of variance over the past 5 or 6 years. And as the sport has changed, Wichita State hasn't necessarily kept its consistency. But if you would have scheduled Wichita State, in 2011 and knowing they're good, or 2012, knowing they're good, but not knowing what they would be, thinking you could win that game and you lose, it might feel like a bad loss in late November, early December. Then you see, oh, this team's undefeated. Or they are, the year before they went undefeated, they went to the Final Four. Oh, that was a Final Four team, right? The win or loss can age better or worse as time goes on. And I think my biggest issue here, Ray, in terms of arguing like strength of schedule, especially in non-conferences, you have to take a lot of non-conference games kind of with just a pinch of salt there, because it's also how your team was in November and December. And the thing with Auburn that is really polarizing to me is that they did have some really good non-conference wins. They did beat St. John's. They did beat who I think is a good NC State team. They scheduled incredibly tough. They had, a close loss to, not close, they had to get blown out by Purdue. They got blown out by Arizona. They got lost by 30 to Michigan, and they lost by 1 to a really good Houston team. Those are elite programs, and you tip your cap to somebody who's willing to schedule that. And you look at what they've done since January 31st. They've won 2 games since January 31st. 2. They went from being 5-3 to the SEC to 7-10 in the SEC, and those wins came against Kentucky at home and at LSU. Or home against LSU. How you've been in the last couple months really should matter. And I remember an Oklahoma team almost a decade ago when Trae Young was there, and they had a couple of really impressive non-conference wins. Trae Young kind of became the darling of college basketball, and then they get into Big 12 play and they win like 2 or 3 games from mid-January to the end of the season. And I didn't think they belonged in the NCAA tournament. But they had a really high strength of schedule. They got in the NCAA tournament, and Danny Hurley's Rhode Island team wore them out in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They weren't playing their best basketball for about 2 months. And this Auburn team is the perfect example. They haven't played their best basketball for 2 months, and they've had all the margin for error in the world. And if they haven't been able to still win more than 2 games since January 31st, I have a hard time looking at you saying that you are one of the best at-larges compared to a team that, yes, they have not played the same schedule, but they're winning games. They're doing what is asked of them. And to me, that pays a lot of credence to the wins above bubble metric, to where, does it seem silly that Auburn would have Miami, Ohio's schedule and still lose 3 games? But at the same time, they've done nothing but lose. Even if it's against good teams, this isn't the same SEC it was last year. And I think there's something to be said about rewarding winning in this instance, especially when teams are going to say yes when you try to schedule them, teams will say no when Miami, Ohio tries to schedule them.
Yeah. And I think that does make a difference. And I love that he actually did the research to see that, they really tried to get the opponents and try to make that schedule. They're not afraid to play them, clearly.
Yeah.
They've reached out to Ohio State. We'll play you.
Yeah. Kansas, too. Kansas is one of those, it's not like they're I hear, Murray State's going to be really good this year. Let me try to schedule Murray State. Or, Creighton's really good, but that's a top 50 team. I'll try Creighton. They tried Kansas.
Oh, jeez.
And going to Kansas. And a lot of these teams didn't want to pay them to come there. But that's usually how all of this goes. Most of your non-conference games against mid-major opponents are going to be bye games. Almost all of them are going to require some type of price tag. And usually teams are willing to pay that. Miami, Ohio needs some of those also just to give money to their athletic departments. Again, the MAC as a league does not have the same television contract that the Big 12, SEC, ACC, and Big 10 have. Not even close. They rely on a lot of that money to be able to just have their athletic department function sometimes. They don't mind taking a 40-point beating or whatever it is on the road if it meant getting that check and having, that rising tide lift all boats. But teams aren't even willing to play them. They say, hey, we come here for free. And that's usually not how this works.
No.
These are also business decisions. And that's an element of this that kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
And that's a good point, because it is. A lot of this is business. But it's also business. Like you said, coaches can be in the hot seat because they don't get into the NCAA tournament. Well, if you can't get into the tournament because you're doing a good job, but you can't play other teams because now there's the whole strength of schedule metric. Yeah, it's a catch-22.
Yeah, and teams like Miami, Ohio are in such a tough spot because this isn't teams dodging them because they are better than anybody else in college basketball. They're being dodged because they're not bad enough and they're also not good enough, right? It's a really weird thing. You could say, hey, really struggling to find teams, and it's not because we're playing too well. It's also because we're not bad as teams in the bottom, 100 in net. And there are a lot of Power 4 schools that are looking specifically for how you finished in the net ranking the year prior if they want to get you on the schedule or not. And that's a real flaw. In basketball, for this example, that's how that goes. It's different in football, but there's still other scheduling issues that we've talked about on this station, ad nauseum over the years. Basketball is not immune to that. Hour number 3 coming up next.
Still, things are closed there. Assembly at Blossom, so that is closed right now due to an earlier accident. So map out a different route there. Gardner's Ferry near Atlas Road, an accident. I-20 eastbound at Highway 601. I-26 westbound at Lake Murray Boulevard, and Shop at Pineview, also an accident there. So do be careful out there this morning if you would. 82 is going to be our high today, mix of clouds and sun. Once a little of the fog burns off. Clouds tomorrow, high of 83. 82 for Sunday, maybe an afternoon shower coming in. And but right now, just a little bit cloudy and 65. 107.5 The Game.
The early game, third and long hour, starts right now. I'm Elijah Campbell. She is Jen Jensen for now. She's about to sub out. And Terry Ford subbing in.
We couldn't afford anything better, so that's what we got.
Oh, man. Terry hasn't slept in like 3 days. He's hanging in there, though. Terry Ford about to sub in as Jen heads out. Our man Thomas is in the video production room here at Studio 803, where, of course, we stream all of our shows on our YouTube page in our final hour of the early game here in Studio 803. And you can see how beautiful the setup that our engineer Randy Young has helped make for us on our YouTube page at The Game TV Radio. But I want to give a shout out to my man Rocky, who's been waiting patiently on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Rocky, good morning. Glad we can get to you, my man. Welcome back to the early game.
Elijah, appreciate it. Good morning to you. I actually called for a different reason, but then listening to you talking about Miami of Ohio, and this will never happen. I know it, but this is going to be maybe my crazy mind thinking to flip-flop, and they change rules all the time, so I don't know if they could do it, but instead of the conference tournament winners getting the automatic bid, the regular season winners get the automatic bid, and you play the conference tournament for those. Obviously, seedings would take place, but and then the conference tournaments are for those maybe that are trying to get in, and to give a reward for the regular season. And I know there are one bid leagues out there, and that's fine. I think the way it works now is obviously the conference tournament winner gets it, and the regular season winners, if you don't make the NCAA tournament, I think you're guaranteed an NIT.
Yep.
Maybe. I think that's
Correct.
the way it is. But anyway, I don't think that'll ever happen, but nonetheless, that's just kind of my thoughts on that. What I was originally calling, all right, glad you're heading up here to my new city of 6 years.
Okay.
In Greenville, South Carolina. And let me tell you something. If there's ever a municipality that can be used as a model for events like this, it's Greenville, because you have the Bonza Coors Arena, which is right there, and you have plenty of parking. It costs to park, but where do you go where it doesn't cost to park? Okay,
Right.
I mean, that's the norm. But you can, if you get tickets for all day, you don't want to stay in that arena all day and just be there. And you got downtown, you got plenty of restaurants. You can walk down by the Reedy River. You can do all that. It's going to be a beautiful day today up here in Greenville. And if anybody ever got it right about doing something like this, it's Greenville.
Certainly.
So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, Rocky, absolutely. Thank you for the call. Always good to hear your voice, man. Yeah, when it comes to Greenville and the SEC tournament, it's one of my favorite things to cover because of the setup that you mentioned. It's easy to get in there. I do love Greenville as a town too. I mean, I've only gotten to visit just a small handful of times since I moved to the state about 3 years ago, but it is one of my favorite places to go to. And what they do so well is they sell the place out, man. Like, you mentioned like the all-day thing. There's even good turnouts for even some of the earlier games in the day.
And clearly when South Carolina and Tennessee play, they pack it out, a little bit more. And one of the reasons why it's chosen is because of its perfect geographical location to where it is an easy drive for South Carolina fans. It's an easy drive for Tennessee fans, which are predominantly the two programs in the SEC that support women's basketball the most and show out for it the most. And the whole goal, man, is to sell tickets. And you're going to sell the most tickets at a place like Greenville, South Carolina. And that's why I don't foresee them straying away from Greenville much. But it's a great location. It's an easy drive to get into. And Greenville's an awesome town. And even like the ESPN people talk about how much they enjoy hanging out in Greenville. I know Elle Duncan for years said that's one of her favorite places to get to go and cover the sport of college basketball. And to your point earlier, Rocky, it's a very fascinating discussion because I agree with you that the right thing to do in college basketball would be to give the regular season title the automatic bid. That to me seems like the most fair thing to do because I'm one of those, I'm a believer that the regular season title is harder to win than the tournament. A, it's a larger sample size. B, you have to play a handful of true road games, whereas the tournaments are mostly, for most conferences, at neutral sites. I know leagues like the Atlantic Sun do tournament games at home sites. They don't have like a neutralized location, and some like the Horizon League do both. The earlier rounds are at home sites or campus sites, and then your semifinal and final is played at a neutral location. That would be the fair thing to do. Now, unfortunately, Rocky, even though, actually, I say unfortunately, I don't mean that. The reason that it's the tournaments get the auto bid is because this is a television product, and there is really, to me, no better drama in sports than watching a game between two mid-majors where the winner gets to go to the NCAA tournament and achieve the season-long goal, because for those schools, that is the season-long goal. We can talk about even programs that are kind of middle of the road in power conferences, kind of like, I'm just spitballing here, like a Missouri or a Virginia Tech or, any team like in the Big 12, like a Cincinnati, right? Like they want to get to the NCAA tournament, but they really play for advancement, right? NCAA tournament making it is kind of like the baseline expectation. With those schools, that is your Super Bowl. That conference championship is your Super Bowl because A, it's when we play it on national television. B, it gets you into the NCAA tournament, so you get to see your name on Selection Sunday. And those are transformative experiences. I've talked numerous times about my alma mater, which is in a small league, a one-bid league every single year. And the best years of their entire athletic department when it comes to making money and actually generating decent revenue are the years that they go to the NCAA men's basketball tournament. It's good for the entire athletic department. Like, that's what dreams are made of. For coaches, right? Coaches that take their mid-majors to the NCAA tournament, and sometimes whether they win that first-round game or not, end up getting better jobs because they took X school to the NCAA tournament. One of the reasons why Lamont Paris was on South Carolina's radar is because they had maybe the most thrilling conference championship game of all time to punch their ticket into this thing, and that got Lamont on Ray Tanner's radar. And now, he's here, and the rest is history. But even though the regular season title, being the auto bid, is probably the right thing to do, having it be the tournament champion is the most dramatic thing to do. And I think that drama that we get and that we're going to get here this week, I know the OVC, or the Ohio Valley Conference, will crown their champion on Saturday. Usually they're always the first one. And then in the following days after that, you'll see numerous teams punching in their tickets. And it's the only time the average college basketball fan is going to be watching, Wright State or somebody like that throughout the year. But because they watch it because there is a tournament berth on the line. And it used to be a really cool thing, many years ago, where the regular season title in those one-bid leagues still at least got the consolation of getting the NIT bid. And the NIT's kind of diminished a little bit because the big power programs are now playing in, the college basketball crown event, or they just elect not to play postseason basketball altogether if they don't get into the NCAA tournament. But for those mid-majors too, even, Tennessee, Chattanooga, who ended up winning the NIT last year, that was like the highlight of their season. So they were still able to get to it because they won the regular seasons. There's still some value to that, but it's nowhere near the same as being able to punch in your ticket to the biggest of dances. Now this weekend too, and you can hear the pregame at 12:30 on Saturday here on the game and on the Gamecock Sports Network. The men's basketball team is going to have their season finale at Ole Miss, and then they'll be playing on Wednesday in the SEC tournament in Nashville. This is very interesting because Ole Miss, when I look at their team, this seems like a really winnable game because Ole Miss isn't very good. Now, there's some variance. That's what makes them interesting, is because they have beaten some good teams. One of the reasons why you can look at Auburn as a team that doesn't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament is because they went to Oxford and got beat by this Ole Miss team. And if you just look at the roster, there's a lot of really good basketball players here. The fact that Ole Miss is 12-18, to me, is pretty inexcusable. And it's been a horrific coaching job by Chris Beard and that entire staff. They have underachieved every single step of the way. And that it might give you a little bit of hope that South Carolina can end the year on a high note, or in the regular season on a high note. Like, you look at A.J. Storr, that's a guy that was a starter at Wisconsin. He was a starter at Kansas, and now he's been a starter here at Ole Miss. Malik Dia, who is one of the more intriguing players in college basketball because he's a center that shoots a lot of threes. They got a couple of guys from over in Europe. Patton Pinkins has been a really good freshman for them this year. James Scott's played a lot of basketball. They have a lot of experience. There's a lot of talent, but the results haven't necessarily been there for Ole Miss this year. And for a team that should have been a pretty good shooting team is absolutely atrocious at shooting. For a team that should be a really good rebounding team is absolutely atrocious at rebounding. I've read you stats with South Carolina's rebounding futilities at times this year, but if I told you that there's a team that's playing in this game on Saturday that ranks 231st in offensive rebound percentage and 303rd in defensive rebounding percentage, you couldn't tell me if that was South Carolina or Ole Miss. That team that I just reeled off in those numbers belong to Ole Miss. That's a team that does not take advantage of the glass, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue for South Carolina in this game. It's going to be an even fight on the boards. They have not been the best two-point shooting team this year. They're outside the top 230 in college basketball in two-point efficiency, so they don't have a great interior presence, and they shoot a lot of long two-point jumpers, and they're not really good at making those two-point jumpers. One thing about KenPom this year that I really enjoy, they've added a stat of average two-point attempt distance, and Ole Miss ranks 362nd, which is next to last, basically, or two spots away from last when it comes to their average two-point attempt distance. They settle for a lot of inefficient-looking mid-range jumpers, and a lot of them are contested. I remember a game a couple of years ago when Ole Miss came here, and South Carolina won in the year that they won 26 games and went to the NCAA tournament. They forced Ole Miss to shoot a lot of inefficient mid-range jumpers, and that was a big reason that they were able to win the game. They hit a lot of them that night, but it was still a reason they were able to win that game. Ole Miss's shot selection isn't very good. The rebounding isn't very good. This is actually maybe I'd say the last really winnable game that you have here on the schedule, the last game of the regular season. And more than likely, I guess you're playing Vanderbilt. If everything kind of holds up, it looks like you'll be playing Vanderbilt on the Wednesday of the SEC tournament, and that's a Vanderbilt team that has an incredibly high ceiling. But that is an interesting game on its own. Lamont Paris was on Carolina Calls earlier this week, and he was talking about needing guys to play aggressive and strong. Terry, this is going to be cut 8 on today's list. Lamont Paris did mention needing guys to play aggressive and strong, especially in this matchup against Ole Miss tomorrow.
He's not really like he's more of just like play ball kind of coach.
Oh, Lenoris, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you have practiced, Lenoris? Lenoris!
Well, I think that's only one small component of it is how strong you are, right? You can be strong or you can play strong. And I've seen some guys, Kevon Looney was a guy in high school that was not strong. He's been with Golden State forever, but he played strong. He was aggressive and he played strong. So there's you can differentiate in those two things. But I think a lot of it is, one, do you naturally do those things? Some guys do, some guys don't. Yep. Two, there's a second group that it's not in my nature to do these things, but once you show me that these are important and these are the ways that I can do it, I am so committed to winning that I will still do those. Then there is a third group that is not doing it, period.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I don't care if it helps us win. I don't care. We're not doing that. And those are the ones that are more challenging to get some sort of change, regardless of what button you push. As a coach, that's kind of what you do. You push the buttons. Sometimes it's a foot in your rear end. Sometimes it's an arm around your shoulders. Sometimes it's a personal challenge. Sometimes it's hyping you up to think you can climb Mount Everest. Like, whatever that is, you push that button. And if you're in that middle group, you typically tend to make enough changes that turn you into a physical. You can masquerade as a physical guy even if it's not in your nature.
So that's what they're going to need. Yeah, I mean, masquerading as that guy, even if it is not in your physical nature, is something that they'll need to be able to beat Ole Miss, especially considering they're very gettable on the glass. It's read off those numbers to you, and that's going to be a big thing as to whether or not this South Carolina team can at least go into Nashville with 4 wins on the SEC slate. Again, pregame 12:30. We're at the wrong date. Pregame 12:30. Tip-off will be at 1. Again, that will be tomorrow over in Oxford. But coming up next, part 4 of our series, Money or Dominance. Is the move worth it for FCS schools to make the move to FBS? This has been a discussion fueled by North Dakota State. We'll conclude the series today about debating whether or not the failures of other teams trying to make this jump should deter anyone else, and we'll do that next. Favorite place is just to go hang out, get some swings in, take advantage of those incredible golf zone simulators that allow you to play at over 300 different courses. And it's just a great place to be able to take the kids to be able to go get some swings in. If you have a young golfer in your life that's wanting to really learn the game, it's the perfect place to help them hone in on their skills, improve, and enjoy just a fun afternoon playing some golf indoors. But also, if you are interested in playing in the 2026 Pro Swing Spring Golf League, well, it starts on Monday. So if you've been thinking about it and you want to do it, you should go ahead and sign up right now. The league runs from March 9th through June 7th. You get your 10 regular season weeks and 2 playoff weeks, and you can do it at either location at your convenience, in either Chapin or Forest Acres location. And of course, it's $40 per round. But if you are a member, you can get it for $25 per round. Just one of the many perks of being a Pro Swing member. Don't wait. Go and sign up at ProSwingColumbia.com today.
Quick check on the traffic. Accident downtown Columbia, Assembly at Blossom, also Augusta Highway near South Carolina 24. Western Lane at North Wingard as well in Irmo. Don't forget, a lot of sports coming up here on the game. Today, 11:30 pregame, noon tip. South Carolina and Kentucky, the quarters of the SEC Women's Tournament. Again, that's on 107.5 The Game. And this weekend, we got men's basketball, the final regular season game. Ole Miss hosting South Carolina, 12:30 pregame, right here on the Game in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach. More of the early game coming up.
Final part of the third and long goes deep series on whether or not it's worth it for FCS teams that have experienced long-term dominance, long-term success to be able to move up to the FBS and try to play their hand at the next level and try to get in on the money that is available to them at the next level. And today is really the best day to wrap this up and discuss the on-field results and whether or not that has made it worth it for a lot of these programs. This kind of all stemmed from an athletic article where North Dakota State moving up has been a little bit of a hot topic with the North Dakota State fan base because there are a few things at play here. Is North Dakota State good enough to play at the FBS level, and especially in the Mountain West? Yeah, absolutely. They've been a powerhouse, and there's a reason that teams, wisely don't want to schedule them on their or put them on their schedule in the Power Four. It's because they have a capability of beating you. They send guys to the league. They have an expectation of dominance. They're always really well coached. It's a machine that really kind of runs itself now at this point at the FCS level. But do you sacrifice maybe some long-standing rivalries? Do you sacrifice maybe fan investment if the results don't come immediately? And there are a lot of examples as to this. I think Georgia Southern's one of the best examples. They started off really hot in FBS. They won 9 games the first 2 years, and then they had a couple of losing seasons, and then they've had various levels of success and some levels of mediocrity in that time. And we have a good sample size of them because they joined in 2014. And I know James Madison is the example, the extreme example of a team that came in and was successful right off the bat. They also had a dude at coaching, Kurt Signetti, who just wins everywhere. Just Google him. But then they get Bob Chesney, and then they become a team that goes to the college football playoff. They got to accomplish what FCS schools that make this jump every year shoot for, which is to get to the college football playoff, try to compete at the highest level of the entire sport, even if it does sacrifice certain things that kind of made up the fabric of your program, made up the soul of your football program and your fan base. And the more I've thought about it, the more I've discussed it with Preston, with Nick, I think I've come to the conclusion that it is worth the squeeze, or it's worth the risk. And it's crazy to think that anybody would get bored of winning. And there's a sentiment in some parts of the North Dakota State fan base that there is boredom with being this successful in the FCS. And we see this with HBCU schools all the time that have really successful years in which they've proven that they could beat anybody at the FCS level. And you make the decision after winning your conference, do you play in the Celebration Bowl or do you try your hand at going into the FCS playoff? But more often than not, you see them play in the Celebration Bowl because of how much it means to their fan bases to be able to go and play in that game. When it comes to FBS schools, there are a few of them that are on the NCAA's list of top 100 revenue-producing athletic departments. You look at a school like Sacramento State, which was mind-blowing to me that they are on this list, but they do make really good money as an athletic department. And they haven't even been in the FBS yet. You look at this list and you see somebody like Cal Poly or Stony Brook who maybe don't have a lot of football success, but they still are able to generate revenue. If they're able to make that jump, they can only make more from what they have, even if they are getting pummeled and they're going 3-9 or 4-8 on any given year. To me, it does certainly feel, after discussing it and thinking through it to myself, because I was pretty split on this. To be completely transparent, I was completely split as to whether or not. I've tried to put myself in the shoes of some of these fan bases and ask whether or not I would want to make that risk. And as somebody who graduated from a school who used to be an FCS school, now that it was in the late 90s, made the jump, and they've kind of wallowed in obscurity at the FBS level now for 25 some odd years. Would it have been wise to stay in the FCS if you want to hone in on winning? Yes, but would you have made the same money and been able to give that money to other programs that have had success and created some very memorable moments for that fan base? Sure, I would say that was definitely worth it. And then when it comes to, like, group of 5 schools, whether or not they should have their own playoff as opposed to giving an auto bid of one of them to go into the playoff, I think a lot of people are pretty split on that too. A lot of people are split on whether or not it means more to be able to just be in the playoff and lose in the first round, or have your own playoff and be able to win it. Do you put an asterisk next to a national championship of the G5? I'm sure most folks would. But you look at a lot of these examples, there are some schools that have been able to pull off both, right? The winning and the money side of it. And we've posed this entire question as you're having to pick one of the two. If to get the money to support your athletic department that exists in the FBS but does not exist at the FCS level. And you see a lot of these programs where it has. Marshall made the jump in the early 2000s, and they're a top 90 revenue producing athletic department in college athletics. You look at James Madison. Now they've gotten the results immediately, and that's helped propel them to being the number 62 highest revenue producing program in college athletics, and they're above some teams that have been at the FBS level and been successful for a long time. Like Boise State's been at the FBS level now for many years and has achieved a ton of success, including going to a college football playoff, including winning BCS bowl games before we even had the invention of the college football playoff, and being a mainstay in the top 25 in the AP for many years. A program kind of like North Dakota State felt like it ran itself for a while and was even coach-proof for a little bit. They're at 68. So as of 2024, James Madison was a more lucrative athletic department than Boise State, who's been doing this for a long time. JMU's been able to get the best of both worlds. It's hard to point to that example and say you can do that too. Anybody could do that. But is it worth it for a school like North Dakota State, who's outside the top 100, to try to get into the top 100 and be able to build up resources that are comparable enough for you to be able to win games and play in a bowl game at the end of every year, as opposed to playing for a national title? Ultimately, I find myself falling on the side of that is the smart course of action, or that is maybe the wisest course of action for any of these programs, is that if you get the invite, because it does require an invite, you can't just volunteer. You get the invite to do it and join one of these leagues, even if it does come at the sacrifice of winning national championships, it's certainly a new challenge, and there are certainly plenty of examples of teams that, even if they started off slow, have now found success, and they don't regret that decision. The more I dig through the examples, the more I find more positive ones than negative ones, especially a school like Delaware, who has seen a lot of success at the FCS level, winning national championships, competing for national championships, and in year one, they go 6-6, but they're able to make a bowl game. And they win that bowl game. Is it a lot of success? No. But is it enough to maybe justify taking a few extra losses to be able to benefit the rest of your athletic department as a whole? I certainly think it does. And I'm curious to know what you think too. 803-404-6100 for the Firehouse Subs text line. Is it worth making that jump? That's the conclusion we have come to today. But coming up next, the South Carolina women's basketball team is making their debut in Greenville for this year's SEC tournament, and they have a pretty tough first game, maybe one of the tougher quarterfinal matchups they've had in a while, with a ranked Kentucky team that is coming off of a win yesterday. We'll break that down. We'll hear from Dawn Staley, get her thoughts about this matchup and the weekend that lies ahead for them in the SEC tournament, coming up next here in the early game.
quick check on the traffic in Irmo. That accident, Western Lane at Wingard, still happening. Sumter at Gervais, accident there. Also downtown Columbia, right by the University Assembly at Blossom. Augusta Highway near South Carolina 24. Divine Street near Woodrow, that's a new one. Also hard scrabble at Clemson Road. And Sumter, again, at Gervais. Our coverage of the women's quarterfinals in the SEC, 11:30 at 12 o'clock tip. Elijah Campbell covering the whole thing from Greenville. It's all coming up here on the game.
You heard my man Terry Ford mention it earlier. My coverage of the SEC Women's Basketball Tournament this week, sponsored by Griffin Pools and Spas, and that journey to another SEC tournament title starts today for South Carolina, and they're going to have to do it against Kentucky, a team that they're familiar with because they just played them less than a week ago over in Lexington. Kentucky, a team yesterday. Now, they've had to play 2 games in the last 2 days, and I think the element of fatigue there can certainly come into play for Kentucky. That's one of the reasons why you want to be a top 8 seed here in these SEC tournaments, men's and women's, is because you want to avoid having to make a run through the tournament, playing at least 4 or 5 games in consecutive days. That can be a lot, especially if you're a team that has aspirations of playing even further in the NCAA tournament. And I think this Kentucky team is clearly an NCAA tournament team with an NCAA tournament resume, regardless of if they win today or not. But there are some elements of this Kentucky team that's going to be challenging for South Carolina. Clearly, they showed it on the basketball floor on Sunday when they played, because it was a 4-point game and South Carolina had to scratch and claw their way out of Lexington with a win. And I think how good Carolina is defensively helped out in that game a lot, holding Kentucky to 56 points. And that allows you to have maybe a subpar game on offense compared to your standards, right? Maybe it allows you to get away with missing 12 shots near the basket. Your best shooter from beyond the arc, Tessa Johnson, going 2 for 10 from 3. It allows you to be able to do that whenever you can just lock up on the defensive side of the ball. What makes this Kentucky matchup so compelling is Kentucky is one of the few teams that is good, I would say really good nationally at both offense and defense too. Now, South Carolina's top 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency, but you play a team in Kentucky today that is top 20 in both offense and defensive efficiency too, and teams that are the 17th team in the country usually aren't that good in both of those areas. That's what makes Kentucky a solid team, a well-coached team. Kenny Brooks was one of the best hires of that coaching cycle a couple of years ago, right? When you got him from Virginia Tech, it's a guy who took Virginia Tech to a Final Four in recent memory. And Don talked about this last night in terms of the first matchup against Kentucky and whether or not anything there might have been a little concerning for this quarterfinal matchup today. And Terry, this is going to be cut 3. This is Dawn talking about and reflecting on that first matchup against Kentucky last night.
Each half, each quarter, I thought it was a tough environment, one. I don't think that environment really phased us to that point. When we look back at the game, we missed. The layups alone. Medina, Joyce, you name it. We were at the rim. Tessa, we were at the rim. We just got to hit it on that white square. Anyway, it's universal. You hit it on the square, where it's supposed to go, it's going to go in. But we had bad angles. We're fortunate that our players really wanted to win the game. Okay, and they bear down and won the game. They could have easily given up. It doesn't change anything for us. It changes everything for Kentucky. But we wanted to win the game.
And she alluded to, again, one of the reasons why that game was close is you missed a lot of opportunities at the basket. And one of the reasons you're able to win is because you made Kentucky miss a lot of opportunities at the basket. Kentucky was 8 of 19 around the rim in that game. So even if Medina's not making them on one side, she can definitely deter her opponents from making them on the other end of the floor, and that is an incredibly valuable trait. But again, as our man Brad Muller would say, you don't want to miss the bunnies. And of course, you can hear Brad today on the game and the Gamecock Sports Network at 11:30, because that's going to be the pregame. The tip-off for this game is going to be at noon. And that's one big element of this game is it going to be different this time when you do get the ball inside? Now, there are pros and cons to getting 29 shots at the basket, right? The pros are you got 29 shots at the basket. It's 29 opportunities for easy 2 points. The cons of missing 12 of them is that you left 24 points off of the board at the off the board at the basket. And this team's gotten a lot better throughout the year. I mean, there's really only 1 or 2 teams in college basketball that have higher percentage than South Carolina does at the rim. This is something that plagued them in their loss to Oklahoma. So it's one thing that can get you if you're not completely sound whenever you get those shots. But one thing that I would be incredibly encouraged with is the fact that you get about 30 of those a game. I think after the LSU game, I tallied them up and did the averages, and this team's averaging about 30 shots at the basket per game. That's why they don't take a ton of threes, is because they oftentimes don't really need to, because if you're getting shots at the basket, those are really good looks, and it's really healthy for your offense. But Kentucky, for them, the big thing is if they hit a lot of shots from the outside, that's when they can be really dangerous. So when they played Georgia yesterday, Georgia plays a pack line style defense that is meant to keep the ball out of the painted area. And for Kentucky to win that game the way they did yesterday, Clara Strack had to hit 5 threes. And that's a player that hasn't hit more than 3 threes in a game. It really hit more than 2 threes in a game since February 5th. It's been a month since she's made those many shots from beyond the arc. She's going to be a big key for Kentucky today. And if for South Carolina to hone in on one player, that's the player that I think I'm watching out for, maybe more so than anybody else on the floor, because she does have the potential to get hot with her jumper and be able to stretch the floor a little bit and put a little bit of pressure on you. And if that's the case, you're going to need Tessa Johnson to play one of her best games. And when you look at that Kentucky matchup, Tessa was 2 of 10 from 3, and I've been very vocal on these airwaves about Tessa Johnson. She can take 10 threes in a game, and I will never be upset with her taking 10 threes. Even if she goes 2 of 10 like she did against Kentucky in Lexington, I can live with her going 2 for 10. I like seeing those three-point attempt numbers go up because she is genuinely one of the best shooters, if not the best catch-and-shoot player in women's college basketball. And when she gets hot, she's an absolute weapon. And she took over that LSU game at times and forced LSU to have to completely change what they did defensively. We'll get one more clip from Dawn here, too. This will be cut for Terry. This is talking about Tessa Johnson getting back into that shooting rhythm that makes her so good.
We want to keep shooting, okay? I mean, it's for shooters that can shoot the ball. We don't want her to get gun shy at all. Shoot the ball. Shoot the right shots. Obviously, I think for Tessa, we need her to get to the free throw line a little bit more. So put it on the floor, get to the rim, just balance out. Sometimes shooters just need to see the ball go in, whether it's a layup or whether it's at the free throw line. I think that she's a pretty darn good free throw shooter. Just doesn't get there enough. So we want her to get to the free throw line a little bit more to mix up what she's doing from outside the three.
And that's some of the best advice you can give any type of shooter, right? I had a really good shooting coach in high school who spent some time as a shooting coach at the NBA level, and he would say, he watched some of us go out there and start taking our first warm-up shots from three-point range, and he says, you're doing it all wrong. You're setting yourself up for failure. Watch a couple go through the basket. Go not just shooting layups, but maybe like 5-footers, easy shots. Just see the ball go through the basket a few times, and you'd be amazed at what it does mentally. And I've remembered that forever for somebody like Tessa, too. If you're able to get a couple of good looks early in this game to where you can drive to the basket, get a couple of layups, use the screens that your bigs can set for you, get a couple of easy looks to go in, and get that confidence going early, you'll be amazed at what that does to your three-point percentage. And what Dawn said at the beginning of the clip also, I think, is incredibly valuable. Just keep shooting. I think we've seen enough in, almost 3 full seasons of Tessa Johnson that she is a consistent 40+% three-point shooter, and you can live with 2 for 10 because she can go 5 for 7 the next game pretty easily. And more often than not, you expect 4 of 8 or, even 2 of 5, 3 of 6, any other game. You've seen enough of it to be able to trust that part of her game will come along, even if there is a game where she does end up missing 8 of them. So I think that's not just so important for this game, but moving forward too. It's one thing to get a lot of good shots at the basket, but if you do get into a rock fight with a team that is able to pull you into the deep end of the pool, having an elite three-point shooter gets you out of that, especially late in games in this month of March. Again, pregame, 11:30. Tip-off, 12. My man Brad Muller is going to be on the call here on the game, and you can hear that. And tip-off's going to be here in just a little over 3 hours of time, and then I'll be heading there as soon as I get off the air here. I'm packing it up. I'm getting in the car. We're heading to Greenville, and my coverage will be brought to you by Griffin Pools and Spas. But coming up next, though, we're hoping South Carolina's a winner in this SEC tournament. I'll give you my winners for today's show coming up next.
Winners.
Oh, and we have so many winners for you, Coach Singletary. Every day to round out the early game, we give you our winners for today's show, or maybe just give some shout-outs along the way, and always brought to you by the Golden Spur. And there are a lot of winners I want to get to that I even got to mention on the show today. Starting off with my first winner, maybe the Golden winner because of how impressive this is by the Golden Spur. Brought to you by the Golden Spur. Modern medicine, because it's reported that Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics expected to play tonight. The man tore his Achilles in May against the New York Knicks in a playoff series. That's one of those injuries that when it happens and I see somebody ends up tearing an Achilles or anything like that, I chalk it up to a year. Whatever 365 days is after that injury, that is when I expect that player to be back. And we've seen in sports now, because of the serious and severity of that injury, recovery times have been a little bit longer, even with all the advancements in modern medicine. Tom Haberstroh wrote a really good article about this on Yahoo Sports about the recovery length of a lot of players, in basketball specifically, because I think you see this injury more in that sport than you do anything else. of the average recovery time extending, right? Because you were so cautious with that type of injury. And in sports, sometimes when you do tear an Achilles, sometimes you're never the same after that. We've seen countless examples of players who have torn their Achilles and have never been the same afterwards. And then you saw an example like Kevin Durant, who tears an Achilles, waits an entire year and change, and then comes back, and he's had 2 All-NBA seasons, made 6 All-Star games since then, and is still putting up, almost 30 points a game every year since that injury. He's been just fine. But Jason Tatum doing it in 10 months is one of the more impressive feats, to be able to come back pretty much 2 months early from what my blanket timeline would be for anybody. He's expected to play tonight, and the fact that he is playing is mind-blowing to me, and hopefully he can still be the same type of player and isn't rushing it, right? We've seen instances where players might even rush it and they're never really the same after that. I mean, for anybody who's like me and was a big Kobe Bryant fan, you remember when Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles? He came back in 8 months after his Achilles tear and only played 6 games before fracturing his knee and then missing the rest of that season, but he wasn't very good in those games in return. He was nowhere near the version of Kobe Bryant that made him a Hall of Fame basketball player. And another winner, great coach quotes, because Joe Mazzulla is no stranger of having one of the best quotes in sports on a day-to-day basis. The man is a quote machine. And he was quoted when it came to talking about whether or not, Jason Tatum is probable or questionable for Friday or anything like that. He goes, quote, "I might not even be alive by that day. I go to bed questionable. I wake up probable." Always a winner of a quote from Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla, a permanent winner on this program because of that. Another winner for today's show, patriotism, because we played a clip of Aaron Judge talking earlier. Now, it wasn't the most riveting speech that he had to his team. I saw plenty of jokes online, saying that, that speech got me ready to run through a wet paper towel. It wasn't the most riveting speech, but we're coming off the heels of Team USA in men's hockey winning a gold medal for the first time since 1980. At a Winter Olympics saw both men's and women's hockey teams win gold by beating Canada, which is the gold standard in international hockey. The World Baseball Classic is starting, and I don't know if we can still tap into the whole collective cheering experience for baseball like we did in hockey, because the Winter Olympics and World Baseball Classic don't necessarily hold the same gravity. But if you are into patriotic sports, this baseball team, Tyler Head's behind the board right now. Tyler, have you seen the pitching lineup?
I have. I know, because tonight's Brazil. Is it tomorrow's Great Britain?
I think so.
Yeah,
I didn't know Great Britain played in this event.
Because that's the game that Tariq Skubal's going to throw like 55 pitches and then jet out of there and go back to spring training, which is funny to me. But, I'm excited for it. Maybe not the same level of patriotism as the Olympics, but always cool when we get this event every couple of years.
Yeah, the pitching lineup for Team USA is probably the reason they're like the betting favorite in this. I mean, Paul Skeens, Tariq Skubal, Logan Webb on this too. Garrett Whitlock is going to be pitching for Team USA. Clayton Kershaw's on the roster. I don't know how many pitches you're going to get out of Clayton Kershaw.
Maybe a ceremonial pitch.
Right.
Just to say he was involved.
He gets a uniform. He gets to throw the ceremonial first pitch to start the entire World Baseball Classic. And then they're like, all right, buddy, you can move on now with the rest of your life. But I'm with you, Tyler. I don't think it'll invoke the same level of collective sport viewing experience that we saw with hockey. But I was a little surprised to see Team USA is the favorite to win this thing. And if they do win it, that would at least invoke some of that, maybe if not to the same degree.
Yeah, I mean, we had a fun final a couple years ago with Japan and the legendary at-bat between Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. I don't know if we're going to get something that exciting coming down to the very end, but should be fun. Nice little appetizer for the MLB season, consider the fact we might not get an MLB season next year.
Oh, yes. Speaking of Team USA Baseball, Jack Veltri is wearing his Team USA Baseball jersey right now. Is that an Aaron Judge jersey, I assume? Okay, yeah. Jack
was fired up by the Aaron Judge speech the other day, I'm sure.
Well, there are dozens of people that were, and I guess Jack is part of the group of dozens right there that was fired up with Aaron Judge's speech. Tyler, do you have any winners for today?
I do. Mid-major conference tournaments.
Yes.
This is my favorite time of year. Obviously, the NCAA tournament is its own thing, and that's exciting. But watching these teams fight for one spot to make it in is thrilling. You get some basketball played in obscure places. I was watching a little bit of the MAAC tournament last night with Manhattan and Fairfield being played at the Boardwalk in Atlantic City. I'm like, this is phenomenal. This is what I love about this time of year. Small teams playing in weird places.
It is a gym. They're all gyms, man. It's a gym to be able to play in that place in Atlantic City. It's always a fun visual. And if you didn't see it last night, we got a 3/4 court buzzer beater with Lehigh beating Holy Cross. That was exciting.
That's what John Rothstein lives for.
It is. And shoot, man, that's what I live for. We have our first ticket getting punched to the NCAA tournament this weekend. It's always usually the Ohio Valley Conference, and that league's not what it used to be. But it still does produce some great television. That will be this weekend. And I'm with you, Tyler. I know the NCAA tournament is the prize, and that is the most fun, but I get just as much fun watching teams play for their season in neutral site locations. That's all we have for today. 3 hours till tip-off for the women in the SEC tournament. Jack Veltri and Tyler had the extra point. They are next.